welcome to week 2 of our weekly videos. I'm excited that you're here, and so I want to go ahead and just dive right into what the Lord has for us this week. So this week we're going to be talking about prayer and just really examining the way that we pray and maybe changing our perspective and the mindset that we have and the heart that we have when going into prayer. And like a lot of you, I'm sure you've probably had some extra time this week to spend in prayer, just like I have, and the last few weeks even, where we've been on lockdown a little bit and we haven't had, as much to do and much places to go. So I hope that you've been spending more time in prayer and that you can just really examine the things in life that you need the Lord to hear you in. And so our first verse that I want us to look at today is Jeremiah 29:12, and it says, "When you call upon me and you come and pray to me, I will hear you. You will seek me and find me when you seek me with all of your heart." So what he says again is, you will call upon me and you'll come pray to me and I will hear you. And so in that verse in Jeremiah, like when he says to us, when you come to me and pray, like I will hear you. We don't have to question going into prayer if he's going to hear it. Like he does hear it. He promises he's there and he listens to every prayer. No matter how small or silly or simple we might think it is, or how selfish we might think we're being, that the Lord hears all of them. And so it does take faith to believe that when you're praying to him that he's going to hear you. And it takes the faith too to know that he's also going to answer that prayer. So yeah, he doesn't just promise that he's going to hear our prayers, he also promises that he's going to answer them. He's not just going to leave us there wondering forever. And it's important to know too that, the timeline that we might have for a prayer isn't always going to be the same timeline that the Lord has. That we go in to ask him, we go to pray to him and to talk to him and seek him for help and for wisdom. But he answers that prayer in the time that is perfect. And that's something that is so hard and something we have to learn to just trust and believe in, is that he answers it in the most perfect time. It might be sooner than you think, it might be longer than you think, it might be right when you're expecting it. But it's so important to go into prayer believing that he's going to answer it and believing that he's going to answer it at the perfect time. And so another verse that I really go to about prayer is in John. So it is John 13:7. It says, "Now Jesus answered him, 'What I am doing you do not understand now, but afterwards you will understand.'" He said this to Simon Peter. He said, "What I'm doing now you don't understand, but afterwards, later on, you will." And so that's something that Jesus said. These words that we read they're written in red. They're the words that came out of Jesus' mouth. And just because he said them during his life, a long time ago, doesn't mean they're not still true today. The Word of God's living and active, which means that it's true for people back then. It was true back when Jesus said it, and it's still true for us today. And it'll be true for us in the future. Is that it never goes void. It never gets too old for what we're talking about. And so Jesus says in that moment in this story where he's washing the feet of his disciples, and they're like, "What are you doing? Like, that doesn't make sense, Jesus. What are you doing?" And all he says is, "You don't understand it now, but one day you will." And that's the hardest part about prayer, I think, sometimes, is not believing that he hears, not believing that he'll answer it, but going into prayer believing and accepting that God is going to answer our prayers, but he's going to answer it in the way that's the best way. And a lot of the times, we don't get the answer from God that we necessarily want. Now, you may be praying something like you want a family member who's sick to get better. You may be praying about getting into a certain school. You may be praying about a relationship. And in your mind, you have the answer that you really want God to give you. And that might be a good answer. But we have to go into prayer, into our relationship with the Father, saying, "God, here's my request. Here's what's on my heart. I'm asking you to answer it, and God, I trust that the way that you answer it is the best way, even if I don't understand it." And he says, you might not understand the way that I answer your prayer right now. You may not understand it in 5 years. but I promise you that one day you will understand. And that's the thing about even with prayer with God, is that no matter what answer he gives us, it's good. It's the best. There's no better answer than what he gives us. And if he doesn't give us the thing we're asking for, he'll give us something better. And if he doesn't give us the thing that we want in the way that we want it, he's probably protecting us from something, or he has something greater in store. And so that's a verse that I want us to really remember is, I don't understand it now. Maybe what's going on right now, maybe your senior year got cut short. Maybe your orientations for schools isn't happening. Maybe your prom got canceled. Maybe you're like, I don't get it. God, why us? Why now? Maybe you don't understand everything that's going on in the world right now. But he says one day you will. But we have to have faith. We have to have the humility to go to him in prayer and to be willing to receive the answer that he gives us, no matter what it is that we want it to be. And so one more verse I want to share with us is just another truth. It's from 1 John 3, and it says, 1 John 5. 1 John 5:14, it says, and this is the confidence that we have when we come towards him, that if we ask anything according to his will, he hears us. And we know that he hears us in whatever we ask, and we know that we have the requests that we have asked him. We have confidence going towards him, knowing that if there's anything we ask according to his will, he hears us. And he knows, y'all. No matter how quiet you think your prayer may be, no matter how distant you might feel from God, that he's going to hear it. And so I want to challenge you as you spend time in prayer. I want to first challenge you to make it a habit, a practice of prayer. Whether it's the first thing when you wake up, whether it's when you're taking a shower, or you're in the car, or your set time that you have with the Lord every day. To really pray, to thank him for who he is, to glorify who he is, to confess things you need to confess. And then what we call supplication is asking him for what it is that we need, knowing that he'll provide what's best. And so I challenge you to as you're praying, what I want you to do is to write down the prayer request that you have. And then I want you to write down after that, how do you want God to answer it? Maybe your prayer request is, I want my grandfather to get better from his sickness. And the answer you want is, yes, I'll heal him. Then I want you to leave a space for what answer it is that God gave. What's the answer that God gave once he answered that prayer? And this will help you be aware that God's answering prayers, because sometimes we pray things and we forget we prayed them, but we don't really realize that God answered them. We just think it just happened. So it's a way for us to acknowledge and kind of keep track of how God answered our prayers, and to remind us that he does answer them like he promised. But the other part of this is I want you to also write, how did you respond when that prayer was answered? Did God answer your prayer in a way that you didn't expect, or a way you didn't want, and did it make you become distant to him? Were you mad at him because he didn't answer it the right way? There was times in my life when I was younger growing up, and I prayed for serious big things. You know, a parent who was sick. I prayed for healing. You know, I prayed for different things growing up that were really big, traumatic things. And because God didn't answer them the way that I thought he would, because I thought he's a good God, he's going to answer it in a good way. And my interpretation of good is sometimes different than his. And so when God didn't answer my prayer the way I expected and wanted him to, me being sinful and not fully trusting him, I pushed him away. And I didn't think he was good anymore, because his answer to the prayer was not good to me. But then as I grew and matured and learned more about him and learned more about my relationship with him and grew closer to him and trusted in him and could humble myself, we learned that when God doesn't answer prayers the way that we want, it doesn't change who he is. That he is always loving and good and faithful, no matter what happens and no matter how he answers a prayer. So I really want you to focus on going into prayer fully humble and vulnerable and trusting in him and saying, God, this is my prayer, and no matter how you answer it, I'm still going to trust you and have faith in you. And if that takes a huge step of faith, then you will see how much more trust you've put into him. Because it's easy to trust somebody until they let us down, but God's not going to let us down. And when we think he's let us down, we have to change our perspective, because he's a God that doesn't do that. And so I want you to practice your prayers. I want you to write down your prayers, write down the answers that you're wanting the Lord to answer, how you want him to answer, then leave a space so that later you can write down, okay, he did answer it and here's how. And then examine and say, how did I respond to it? And this should be a way that you grow closer to the Lord, that you become more habitual in prayer, and a way that you can see how you're responding as well. So I just challenge all with this, tell a friend, talk to a friend about it. I've had people come to me after doing this and they're saying, wow, like if I hadn't written this down or if I hadn't been this intentional about it, I don't think I would have realized it was God answering it. And so it's a really cool thing to do. It's a really awesome way to grow closer to the Lord, even just after a few days of it, even after journaling it a couple times. And this will help you so much in life as you make hard decisions and you are praying about serious big things. And so that's my challenge for you this week, to just change your perspective when you pray, and to just be vulnerable and to be humble and say that, Lord, no matter how you answer it, because I know you will, that no matter how you answer it,